Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Jason White and this is Jason's Weird Reads, and today I'm going to share with you my top favorite cozy horror books. Now, cozy and horror probably shouldn't go well together at all, but they do. And I'm going to share with you the ones I think are the best. Alright, so I split this up into three categories. We're going to start with middle grade books. We're going to move on to classic horror books. And then we're going to move on to adult cozy horror books. And you can find the timestamps for that down there in the comments, which I'm going to make for you guys. Alright, let's start off with the cozy horror. Or, yeah, we're doing cozy horror, Jason. There's three middle grade books here I want to talk about because they're all fun. Most of the middle grade horror books that I've read had a real strong cozy feel to them. And these ones I think are just the best ones. They have the biggest, perhaps the biggest cozy feels to them. And one of them maybe not so much because it was surprisingly dark. Alright, the first one is The Haunted Mask. I've talked about this book extensively. It's a very good Goosebumps book. And as I said, I've talked about it a few times here, but I just want to say it's a really good book on the effects of bullying. And one thing I really enjoyed about this book is that the bullies don't always know that they're being the bullies. They're just having fun. But I think another message beyond what I've talked about in this book is that you've got to take, if you're doing something to somebody that's hurting them and they say it's hurting them, you got to take that into account and listen to what they're saying, because you could inadvertently create a monster who will come back for vengeance, if not towards you than towards somebody else. And nothing is more annoying than a person who thinks it's okay no matter what they're doing because they simply want to do it. I know too many people in life who are like that. If they're doing it, it's okay because they want to do it. But that's neither here nor there. This book is all messages aside. This book's just a lot of fun, and it's very cozy. It'll give you the Halloween feels if you're looking for that. So I highly recommend it. Also, The Boy Who Cried Werewolf. It's a Monster Street book by J.H. Reynolds. This book is just a lot of fun. It's about finding out who you are, which is the very basis of middle grade horror books. And this story is about a young boy who's left off at his grandparents' house, and he doesn't want to be there. He's left there for a couple of days by his mom. It was agreed upon by his grandparents and herself. And he, like I said, the grandson doesn't want to be there because he's barely even met his grandparents, and it's just, he's out of his comfort zone. He doesn't know what to think, or, you know, he doesn't know how to act around them. He just doesn't want to be there because he doesn't know who these people are. But he soon learns who they are, and he also learns who he is. And there's a bit of a mystery in this book. It's a lot of fun. It gives you those cozy feels, especially if you're looking for an autumnal story, because although this is not a Halloween story, it does take place during October, so you could read it for Halloween. It has all the fall things. It has pumpkins. It has the churning color of the leaves and the cooler weather. So that gives the cozy feels as well. And last up, Caroline by Neil Gaiman. This is the one I was talking about. That was a little dark, honestly. It kind of goes into adult territory in a sense with some of the themes that are explored in this book, but it still has a very strong cozy feel to it. It's about Coraline, a little girl who finds an alternate reality that looks just like our own, and it has her other mother and her other father in there, but they have buttons for eyes. I'm sure that most people are familiar with this story, but it gave me some really cozy feelings while I was reading it. Alright, let's move on to the classic horror. This one I think is a lot of fun because I think, honestly, I said in in an earlier video that classic horror was written for Halloween and Christmas seasons. Classic horror almost always takes place during those months, between like September and January the 1st. But you know, you get some that are really cozy and give you those cozy feels while you're reading them. And the first one I'm going to mention here is one I haven't read in a very long time, but I want to read again because I used to read it a lot, and I love this story. And that's The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, this is about... this is basically a story about... it's a Sherlock Holmes story, and Sherlock goes to investigate a murder where they think maybe it was like some supernatural demon dogs that did it. And of course, you're there along for the ride. It's a short novella length, I think, and it's just a lot of fun. And I would also highly recommend, if you want to pair this up with a movie adaptation, because there's plenty, but my favorite is the one starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. I think it's a Hammer horror film. I can't really tell for sure. I can't remember if it's Hammer or not. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's a lot of fun, especially if you like those old Hammer horror movies. This is right up your alley. Go check it out. Next up, I have another shorter piece. Actually, I think all these are... yeah, one's a collection. So there you go. Casting the Runes by M.R. James. This is a lot of fun. It's also got a really good adaptation to it as well. But this is really great to be read in the fall if you want. It has all the cozy feels. It's been a long time since I've read this one too. And the movie adaptation, I'm pretty sure, is a lot different from the story itself. But it is a lot of fun. And it's called A Night of the Demon. I'll have a poster for that here. It's one of my favorite old movies. Old black and white film from, I forget what the year is. There are other adaptations, like I'm looking at right here. Casting the Runes from 1979. Haven't seen that one though. But Night of the Demon is a movie from 1957. And I think it's, as long as you don't mind those old style films, it's worth your time checking out. It's a lot of fun. Alright, and lastly, it's not a collection, as I referred to it, it's an anthology, and this is by a guy who does Bite Size Audio, I believe is his channel name. I'll leave a link in the comments. Bite Size Audio is run by Simon Stanhope. He narrates a whole bunch of older classic horror stories, like ghost stories and whatnot. And he does so with a voice that is just so unbelievably relaxing. And he did a collection of, and it's called A Selection of Victorian and Edwardian Ghost Stories. Now this is, I believe, only available as an audiobook, but that's the whole point for them being here. These books are not just cozy, they're very relaxing. And they're just fun to listen to, especially if you like that old style of literature, which I am always a huge fan of. Next, adult cozy horror. Now these books are more modern. Some of them are from like the 80s or whatnot. I think they're not middle grade horror, or they're not, you know, classic horror by any means. Some of them might be modern classic, but for the most part they're modern, and they're meant for adults. So let's get into it here. The Hungry Earth by Nicholas Kaufman. This book was a lot of fun to read. I read it, of course, for my interview with Nicholas, which was a lot of fun. But this book is about a type of fungus that takes you over. If you think the most common fungus that people are familiar with is the zombie ant, and although it's not based off the zombie ant, it's based off the cicada zombie type fungus. It's about that rather than the zombie ant. But this doesn't sound very cozy now, does it? But you know, I invite you to go read it. It really has the cozy feels, especially the first half to 3/4. The book keeps escalating though, but it has like a bit of an investigatory feel to it, almost dark academia, and it's a lot of fun. especially if you enjoy learning about all the weirdness of fungus, because fungus is a weird organism. And maybe it's something we need to worry about, but you're just gonna have plain old fun and feel the cozy feels while reading this book. Next up, I have A Canadian Werewolf in New York, and this is by Mark Leslie. Mark Leslie is also known as Mark Leslie Lefebvre. He's fairly well known in the independent world of writing. I think he's got his own podcast that's called Stark Reflections, and that's if you're a writer and you want to learn a lot about the business of writing, go check out Stark Reflections on your favorite podcatcher. He's a wealth of information, but in this book, it's about a guy who moves from Canada to New York, and very early on in his Canadian life, he's a writer. I should mention that too. He's a writer. He's like a best-selling writer. And he gets bitten by a wolf and he becomes a werewolf. And the story centers around his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend who goes missing, and she sort of employs him because she knows of his extra instincts, his wolfish instincts, I guess you could say. And she thinks that'll help her find her boyfriend, and while he does that, he finds out some pretty interesting things. And this book was a lot of fun. It really has that cozy feel. I mean, if you want a cozy mystery almost, I debated putting this book on because it's not necessarily horror at all, but it does have the cozy feels, and there's a werewolf in it, and it's just a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it if you go and read it. And there's also the ending. I really love the ending because I was a huge fan of David Letterman, his talk show, back in the the 80s, 90s, and the aughts. I believe the inception of which the David Letterman show shows up in this book is probably in the later years, but it was still a blast to read regardless. It is fun and filled with the cozy feels all the way through, so go check that out. Next up, I have another that's debatable if it's horror or not, but I think the horror crowd absolutely loved this book, and it's because there's a lot of horror feels to this book, but it's also very cozy, and it's just a lot of fun to read, and that is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Now, if you're a fan of like books or movies like Rosemary's Baby, you're probably gonna really enjoy this book because it has those feels. It really feels like an extension, I guess, maybe, or at least a serious ode to Rosemary's Baby. I loved this book, and it was a lot of fun to read. Next up, I have We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. This one, it's horror, but it never really gets too extreme. There's a few instances that are debatable. People are probably going to debate on me whether or not this is cozy, but I felt very cozy while listening to it. And no, it's not just because of the heavy metal. Of course, I loved all that stuff, but it was just fun, and it gave me the cozy feels while reading it. Next up, I have The Wise Friend by Ramsey Campbell. This one is a family drama with a supernatural element regarding the aunt who is a painter. She's dead now, and some weird things are happening. Right? The main character, his son and his son's girlfriend, they're sort of like doing a thing because his sister was a famous painter, and she liked to paint some pretty scary pictures. There's some occult stuff that they're investigating, and while they're doing that, they run into some weird supernatural stuff, and it's very slow burn, but it's also very cozy. I got the cozy feels while reading this book, so I highly recommend it. Next up, I have The Complete Crow by Brian Lumley. This is a collection of short stories that involve Brian Lumley, one of Brian Lumley's returning characters in a series, and that is Crow. He's like an investigator of, he's sort of like a Sherlock Holmes, honestly, where he investigates supernatural things. Usually it's always like Lovecraftian in nature, Cthulhu in nature, but I swear to God, they sit around for a majority of the story drinking brandy in their glasses, wearing their, you know, rich people's clothes, sipping on their brandy, and oh, it's discussing it. It's a lot of fun though. It gives you the cozy feelings, and this is the only Crow I've read by Brian Lumley, but I hope to read more in the future. Next up, I have a book that was a lot of fun. It's also the beginning of a series, so if you really enjoy this book, I highly recommend checking out the rest of the trilogy. It's a trilogy, and that is Red Equinox by Douglas Wynne. This is another Lovecraftian investigatory, is that even a word, novel. It's about secret societies, and in some of these secret societies, I can't remember the name of the secret society in this book, in this series, but they are basically there to protect us from the evil of the old ones that could destroy us at any moment. And the first book, Red Equinox, was a lot of fun. It's my favorite in the series. There's a scene in here that's very reminiscent of The Predator Part 2. If you've seen that movie, then you know the subway scene. And there's a similar scene in this book that absolutely blew me away. I loved it. But the rest of the book has a bit of an investigatory, dark academia feel to it that was just a lot of fun and gave me the cozy feels anyway. Unknowing I Sink is next by Timothy Huguenin. I read this one recently, and another Lovecraftian. You're going to find actually a lot of Lovecraftian fiction that could fit into cozy reads, I find. I really enjoyed this one. It was very, very slow burn, and not too much crazy happens in this book, but it was a lot of fun, and it gave me the cozy feels. And there is a bit of a mystery to solve. Not that cozy reads need a mystery or dark academia, but a lot of these have that, because you usually find those in cozy reads, I find. And lastly, I have another favorite of mine that I read for the first time last year, but I'm hoping to read again this year around Christmas, and that is The Woman in Black by Suzanne Hill. Now this one is another debatable whether or not you'd put it in the cozy, because there's a lot of dread, a lot of heavy atmosphere, but it feels like it was written like 80 years ago rather than in the 1980s. It could have been written 100 years ago, and it just has those cozy feels. There is a bit of an investigation, a slight investigation as to what's going on with the main character and the ghostie. It was just a lot. It was fun to read, despite the dreariness, and it gave me the cozy feels, and I think it might with you as well. I guess we'll see if people debate it or not. I guess we'll see. I don't know. All right, so that is my there's 15 books there, my top cozy horror books. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments if you did enjoy it, and leave me a pile of books down there in the darkness, and I'll leave you a pile of books as well. That's if you made it this far anyway. All right, thank you for watching, everyone. Keep being safe and keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys in the next bookish video.